Start? Okay. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmageti Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. So, yesterday we saw just a little bit of background on yoga, and we'll see maybe it in a little bit more detail tomorrow morning, but also the general way how we understand the word knowledge or jnana, direct knowledge, indirect knowledge, higher knowledge, lower knowledge. We saw these different categories. And then we looked at the human personality, how there is this visible, tangible part called the body, the invisible, subtle part, collectively we call it the mind, and then beyond that is the Atman. That physically and mentally we all have different bodies, we have a different mind, but the Atman, the spirit within, is the same in all. And the ultimate reality is that one infinite being. In the books, that ultimate being is often called by the term Brahman. Now, this Brahman needs to be distinguished from Brahma. So we also have this, the Hindu trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. That Brahma, this Brahman are different. So that Brahma, that's Brahma, is a masculine, is the male gender. He has a gender. But Brahman is a neutral gender. It's neither masculine nor feminine. And so remember that distinction. And so the ultimate reality is known as Brahman. Now, Brahman is not the name of a person. Brahman simply means that which is infinite, that which is unlimited. And so that is our true nature. We don't have to become free, we are already free. We don't have to become perfect, we are already perfect. We are birthless and deathless. Then obviously the question is, then what is the problem? We are already infinite, we are already birthless and deathless. The problem is, right now we don't feel that way. In fact, it appears unbelievable if someone says, oh, you are infinite, you are immortal. It doesn't even feel anywhere close to that. So the question that gets asked is, why is it? If I am the infinite one, why do I feel such a small being? If I am the perfect one, why do I feel I'm imperfect? If I am birthless and deathless, why do I have this fear of death in me? So, why is my present experience so contrary to the reality? So, if it is true that the real being is infinite and huge, how did that infinite being become so small? How did that immortal being become this mortal human being? And this question Swami Vivekananda raised in the Chicago Parliament of Religions. And then Swamiji says, the Hindu is bold. And the answer is, I don't know. And that's true. When someone says, well, this infinite Brahman now has become this ordinary human being. How did it happen? I don't know. But how do you know it happened? Well, that's what we are experiencing. Now, when we say I don't know, it's a admission of our ignorance. And therefore, the cause, the primary cause of the problem is ignorance. And I briefly referred to it yesterday, how ignorance can produce all sorts of problems. When I gave the example of a dream, sleep can be defined as ignorance of our waking identity. And we know only when we sleep, we start dreaming and we see unbelievable things, things that don't make sense at all. But in the dream, it all seems to make sense. When we wake up and say, what a bizarre dream I had. So something like that may have happened. That is the approach that is taken in Jnana Yoga. Now think about it this way. Just as when I go to sleep, I forget who I am and I start seeing the dream. In the dream, I find one person in my dream and I identify with that person and say, oh, that's who I am. And whatever that person does in the dream, I feel I'm doing it. So when I wake up next morning, I tell my family members, oh, last night I dreamt. I did this, I did that. Was that some person in the dream who I thought was me? And that person may be obviously completely different from the real me because the real me was fast asleep and dreaming. So there was this me who was asleep and dreaming, and this fake me who was doing all sorts of things in the dream. Now, if this makes sense, now think about what if Brahman goes to sleep? Brahman is this one infinite being, and Brahman says, okay, now I'm going to sleep. Now, Brahman goes to sleep. Let's say, when I go to sleep, I forget who I am. So, Brahman goes to sleep, and Brahman forgets who Brahman is. And so, Brahman's dream, the Brahman sees this whole world with all its galaxies and everything. And in that dream, Brahman sees one person and says, that's me. Now, every one of us, inside our heart, we have the feeling, me, this feeling of I. We mistakenly think that this is my feeling, I. But actually, it's the Brahman who is asleep. That me that I feel in my heart is actually Brahman who is asleep thinking, and that's me. And of course, waking up would mean Brahman again knows I am Brahman. And so when we say Gautam Buddha, the Buddha was not his family name or anything. Buddha simply means one who is awake. And so, from a perspective of jnana, we are already asleep now. We are all asleep. We will wake up only when we know that we are infinite divine being. As long as I see myself as this mortal human being, this is, I once asked this question. There was a great Pandit in Chennai under whom I studied. Name was Sri Varahur Kalyana Sundara Shastrigal. So I was once asking him, I said, everybody says the world is a dream. Oh, whose dream it is? Because if it is your dream, then I cannot do anything about it. You have to wake up. So, if the world is a dream, whose dream it is? And then he said, we all have to think it's my dream. Because ultimately, the reality is only one. There is only one being, Brahman. Brahman is asleep, Brahman is dreaming all this. When Brahman wakes up, Brahman will know I'm Brahman. That's the reality. Now, sometimes this gets described by a more kind of a common kind of experience. Of course, dream is also very common. We all dream. But the classical example given in books is often of a rope that is mistaken for a snake. So there is you enter a room, there is not sufficient light, there is a coiled rope there, and you think, oh, it's a snake. You're seeing a snake. And then you are afraid, you start shouting, maybe you run to get a stick, and then you switch on the light and say, oh, it was only a rope. Now, a lot of discussion has occurred in the books about if it is a rope, why am I mistaking a rope for a snake? Why does a rope? So, what is the status of that snake? Is that snake real or unreal? Now, you have to say the snake is not real because when you switch on the light, you see it's a rope. So, the snake is unreal. But then you say, if it's not real, how am I seeing it? How am I seeing something that is not there? And all that we can then therefore say is, I'm seeing the rope. Even when I'm seeing the snake, I'm actually seeing the rope. But that rope is appearing to me as a snake. So, the statement that this is a snake is partially right and partially wrong. So, I can break up this statement, this is a snake, into two statements. I can say this is something, and that something is a snake. Now, the first part is a very accurate statement. This is something. The second part, this something is a snake, is wrong. I'm able to see. Okay, one other thing. In that room where I mistake a rope for a snake, if that room were completely dark, then I wouldn't see the snake itself, rope itself. So there I wouldn't mistake it for anything. If the room was fully lighted, I wouldn't see the snake also because I will see the rope. So it's very important. The room should be just partially lighted. Enough light for us to know something is there, but not enough light to know what that something is. That condition, it's possible to mistake one thing for another. So I'm able to see the snake. You have to bear with this rope and snake for a while now because this is going to be very helpful. So I'm able to now see the snake because I'm able to see some object there and I'm misjudging what that object is. One thing is clear, I do not know it's a rope. That's why I'm mistaking it. So there is an ignorance of the rope present in me. Now that ignorance, they say now has two powers. There are two powers that this ignorance has because of which I'm seeing a snake there. The first power, the Shakti, is called Avarana Shakti, the power of ignorance to cover the reality. So that's how that ignorance of the rope covers the rope. That's why I'm not able to see the rope. But it does something else. The second power is called Vikshepa Shakti. It projects something else on its place. And so the rope is covered. In place of a rope, a snake is projected. That's how I'm seeing the snake. Now, if you kind of apply that to our own selves, this is Brahman. Now, ignorance has come over Brahman. Brahman is falling asleep. And therefore, Brahman's infinite nature is covered by that Avarana Shakti. And in its place, the Vikshepa is occurring. Instead of seeing Brahman, seeing as a divine being, I'm suddenly seeing a human being. So in this example, the divine being of Brahman is a rope, and my present experience as a mortal, imperfect human being, that's a snake experience. So that's the connection between what I see and what I experience. Now, what do I have to do to make that snake go away? Now, if that snake were real, then of course you have to get a gun, and it's very easily available, I hear, in Texas. But if the snake is not real, then you don't need a gun, you don't need a stick, you don't need anything. All that you need is light. You have to switch on the light and the snake disappears. In the same way, if Brahman were to really have become human being, then knowledge cannot help. For instance, now, if it were really a snake, me simply saying, no, that's a rope, will not change it. So knowledge will help if the snake itself is only a projection, not real. So what we need to do now is get the knowledge that I am this infinite being, I am Brahman. Then this ignorance that I am this mortal human being will automatically go away. Now, ignorance in itself is not so much a problem. What the ignorance can do, that is a major problem. Now, what can an ignorance do? They say that when a baby is born, for the first few hours, maybe first few days, the baby has no idea where its body ends and the rest of the world begins. That idea of individuality, that I am somebody, I am a person, is not there. We don't get it immediately after birth. It takes a few days, perhaps a few weeks, until the baby realizes this is where my body ends and the rest of the world starts. In fact, there is a story that one professor of psychology, when his baby for the first time uttered the pronoun I, he gave a big party to all his friends. Because the awareness of I is a big landmark in our evolution. It is a very it's a very thrilling experience to know that you are somebody. It's they tell the story of a family, parents and their little child. They went to a restaurant for meals, and then the waiter comes and asks them, "What would you like to have?" And then the father takes up the menu and says, "Okay, get me this." He asks the mother, "What would you like to have?" And she says, "Get me this." Then there is this little boy who's there. So that waiter says, "And yes, sir, what would you like to have?" So before this little boy is able to say anything, his father immediately says, "Get him this." This waiter totally ignores the father and once again very respectfully asks this little child, "Yes, sir, what would you like to have?" And then this little child looks at the menu and says, okay, get me this. And then that waiter asks, what would you like to drink? So father says what he wants, mother says what she wants. Then he again asks the little boy, yes, sir, what would you like to have? And before this boy can say anything, again the father gives it, bring him this. Again the waiter completely ignores that father and asks this boy, yes, sir, what would you like to have? The boy is thrilled. The boy looks at the menu again and says, okay, get me this. And after that waiter goes away, this boy's unbelievable experience has happened to him. He says, father, mother, daddy, mommy, this waiter thinks I am real. So sometimes we don't acknowledge that these little children in the family, they are individuals. They can make their own decisions. We want to decide everything for them. So this awareness that I'm somebody, we all have been babies once. It's like some journalist went to a village and said, are there any great people born here? And the villager said, no, no, only babies are born here. Of course, when we are babies, when we were born, we are all babies. Now, we may not remember this, but we all have gone through this stage that for the first few days and weeks, suddenly we realize, I'm a person. Now, that's a great discovery, but it's a mixed discovery because along with the knowledge that this is me, simultaneously comes the other knowledge, this is not me, this is not me, this is not me. So everything other than this is not me. And gradually, as we grow a little bit older, it becomes obvious that which is not me is much bigger than me. I'm just this small little being, and everything that is not me is the world. And the world is much too bigger, much too powerful. So all the source of our anxiety and stress and fear come from this little me surrounded by this entire universe which is not me. So ignorance, go back to what I said before. What happens is, there is this one chain reaction that occurs. That Brahman, who is infinite, the only existence, if a Brahman lacks nothing, Brahman is full, Purnam, Purnamadav, Purnamidam, Purnam. Now Brahman falls asleep and Brahman start dreaming. Now Brahman has become small, no longer that infinite one. And as soon as we become small, as soon as we look at things that are not me, a desire comes into the heart. Because the desires can often take two forms. I become small now, and I look out and something, I need this. This will somehow fulfill me. I don't feel complete, I feel incomplete in some way. And to complete myself, then I desire things from the world. So, ignorance in Sanskrit, they say avidya. Avidya or ignorance leads to desire. Avidya leads to kama, desire. Now, once you have a desire, then that desire needs to be fulfilled. In order to fulfill it, we've got to do action. Like, I have a desire to have a dosa. Then simply having desire, nothing will do. I have to kind of get up and make something which will at least look like a dosa and then start eating it. So action is necessary. So avidya leads to kama, that leads to karma. Now karma, once we do karma, then it is going to lead to results. It usually karma leads to karma phala. One of the reasons, now it's a big subject, karma. We are not going to go into too great a detail about it, but it's good to remind ourselves that we often make the mistake of using the same term for both work and its result. Work is karma. Results of work are called karma phala, whichever way you want to pronounce it. But oftentimes, people use the word karma for both of them. So someone is experiencing some sorrow or pain, and then we say, oh, that's my karma. No, it's not my karma, it's karma phala. Karma means action. Experience of that karma is karma phala. So every work that we do will lead the at the root level to just two basic experiences, either joy or sorrow, sukha or dukkha. Now, the extent of the joy, extent of the sorrow will vary. But basically, if the work is successful, if the work is appreciated, we feel happy. If it fails, if it's not appreciated, we feel sorrow. So, karma and karma phala. Now, whether to experience joy or sorrow, we need a body. Because without a body and mind, we cannot experience joy or sorrow. So, avidya, kama, karma. Karma leads to birth. Because what is birth? Birth means getting a body. So only when I get a body, I can experience joy and sorrow. Now, when I get a body and mind, like we all have done after we were born, we don't just sit in a corner and say, just let me have karma phala. We cannot sit. Even if we want to sit, we cannot sit. Sometimes, if there is some people at home and like they are not doing anything, in many Indian languages, sometimes they'll scold. Don't just sit there, do something, they will say. Actually, doing something is easy. Simply sit there is difficult. None of us can simply sit. And I'm not simply speaking about just physically not moving. Even if somebody can sit still physically without moving, what can you do to the mind? You cannot just stop the mind. So simply sit is very difficult. Doing things is easy. So once we are born, we will do something or the other. There will be physical activity or mental activity. Every action that we do will have its own karma phala also. So we are continuously doing karma and we are also experiencing sukha and dukkha. So on one hand, it's a little bit like we are earning money and we are spending money. On one hand we earn, the other hand we spend. Karma can be thought of in that way. It's like earning karma dollars. Every work you do, you are getting some karma dollars. Every joy or sorrow you experience, you are spending it. So that's how it happens. Except this, we are always doing a lot more karma and not be able to experience all the karma phala in one life. And so when the end of life comes, there is still a lot of unused karma in our account. And then nature says, okay, this body now is gotten too not ready. We can't continue any longer. We'll give you a fresh new body. And then all that unused karma, you can use it up in this one. That's how then we are reborn with this pending karma from our account. But in the new birth also, I'm doing more karma. It's a little bit like if you keep on earning more than you can spend, then your bank account is always going to be full. Now, in financial matters, that's a great thing. In karma situation, as long as there is karma in your account, you have to keep on being born again and again and again. Now we might say, well, that's a wonderful thing. What's wrong? Look, as long as everything is very nice and comfortable, it's like, oh, it's so fun to be born. But just because everything may be going fine in this birth, don't think in every birth things will go equally well. We already looked at the condition of the world. Look at even presently the conflicts that are going on in different parts. What about the babies? Even as this conflict is going on in the Middle East, for instance, so many babies were born in these 4 weeks in Gaza. Now, is that the kind of childhood one would think is an ideal way, or like, oh, I would want to be born again in such a situation? And so, and again, there is no guarantee that we'll be born as human beings either. And they sometimes say that having gotten a human birth, to get another human birth, the number they mentioned something like 84 million other births you have to take before this human birth can come again. So Shankaracharya in his book Viveka Chudamani, he says that people normally think one who take their lives, one who do suicide, that is suicide. He said that's not suicide at all, because you will get another body again. Those who have gotten a human body had this opportunity to realize God, had this opportunity to get a teacher, or had this access to spiritual knowledge, in spite of having all these favorable circumstances, even then do not give their best effort to become free, that is a real suicide. And so, avidya, ignorance, leads to desire, desire leads to karma, karma leads to birth, and birth leads to the experience of joy and sorrow. But then, if we look deeply, we might even ask, is my experience of life an experience of joy and sorrow? And apparently, yes, we all will say, Sukha Dukkha, everybody experiences. But if you look at the words of some of these great teachers, they say something very different. Krishna, in the Gita, Krishna says, Anityam asukham lokam imam prapya bhajaswamam. Having come to this anitya, temporary, transient world, asukham, joyless world, seek God alone. Look at the word asukham. Krishna did not say, oh, having come to this world filled with joy and sorrow, seek God. No, having come to this world which is joyless. Buddha says, dukkham dukkham, sarvam dukkham, it's all suffering. Now, that seems to be very one-sided way of describing it. It just seemed like, oh, they must have been. Now, if this would have been said by some homeless person suffering in depression, then we cannot take it seriously. But then Krishna, himself such a joyful figure, Buddha, who lacked nothing, who was a prince, when they say that the nature of the world is suffering, then we have to look deeply and say, what do they mean by it? And so it's possible to look upon sorrow or suffering at two different levels. Normally, when we experience suffering or sorrow or dukkha, we are aware of, or we refer to, the kind of suffering that can occur due to homelessness, due to poverty, many of these very real problems in today's world. And it's true, that does cause suffering. But we also know that these problems are not universal in the sense that not every person in the world is homeless, not every person is poor. But there are certain other problems which no one is exempt from. Everyone is suffering from it. And I briefly referred to it yesterday when Krishna says, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam. Every living being goes through Janma Mrityu, birth and death, Jara, process of aging. If one is a living being, that person is going to age, is going to grow old. We can hide our age, but we cannot stop it. Illness, we have already seen the havoc it can do, this COVID, what it did. But even without COVID, there's not a single person who can say, I've never fallen ill or I will never fall ill. The body is not a perfect machine. It breaks down now and then. Luckily, it can be fixed also. But the fix also is not permanent. And so, the suffering and sorrow that can come from the process of birth, death, aging, sickness, and at the psychological level to stress, anxiety, worry, the dukkha associated with it is universal. No one is free from it. So when Krishna and Buddha spoke about dukkha in the world, they were referring to this underlying dukkha. Most of our lives have become so shallow, so superficial, that we are only thinking about, oh, today is such a nice sunny day. Oh, I'm feeling so happy. Oh, this something happened. Oh, I'm sad. So our joy and sorrow is so superficial, easy to, and nature actually is playing with us. Nature will come and give us a nice big rasagulla, and we are so happy. Oh, we're enjoying it. Then by the time we're enjoying it, nature will come and give a big slap. And then we sit down in a cry and say, oh, then we start crying again. After some time, nature gives another rasagulla. Whole our life, we're going from sukha here and dukkha there. Sukha, dukkha. Just like a tennis ball, you hit from one side and you hit from the other side. Of course, we get exhausted and tired and old at the end of life. We've been kicked here and there in different ways. And so, if we dive deep, then we see that it's only dukkha. And one important thing, no matter what kind of sorrow or what kind of suffering, it's connected either with the body or with the mind. There is no pain or no sorrow. You can point out and say, neither with the body nor with the mind. They are both connected, either with this or with both of them. If there is a way we can be disconnected from the body and mind, then we'll have no dukkha of any kind. Is it possible? Of course, it's possible. Every day we are doing it already. So when we go to sleep, when we are in deep sleep, sushupti, at that time, temporarily at least, we are disconnected from the body and mind. We don't have any identification with the body and mind. And deep sleep is always a wonderful experience. If you wake up in the morning, sometimes people may be in bed for 10 hours. In morning, they may still feel tired. Because even when we are dreaming, we don't get enough rest. The mind is still shaking a lot. We don't feel rested. How much rested we feel in the morning will depend on how much of sushupti we had previous night. And during that, you see, sometimes dreams can be nightmares. Sometimes dreams will be pleasant if you are lucky. But if you're not lucky, some terrible things can happen in dream. But deep sleep is always peaceful. Deep sleep is always restful. It's always filled with joy because that is the only time we are disconnected from the body and mind. Now, the whole Jnana Yoga really means, can I recreate my Sushupti experience when I'm awake? Because now we know from our own experience, not being connected with the body and mind is full of peace and joy. Can I find a way of not being attached to the body and mind when I'm awake? And the good news is we don't have to really do anything because body and mind are only coverings. We just have to switch on the light and find it's really not even there. So that switching on the light is really what getting jnana or knowledge means. So if you have these copies of the book with you, if you look at this diagram on page, which one? 33. So you look at that diagram on page 33 of your books. If you have it, you'll find a kind of a schematic diagram of what I just mentioned to you now. How there is. In reality, our true nature is infinite ananda or bliss. And that is the state of knowledge. And somehow that dotted line you see, that's when Brahman goes to sleep. When Brahman goes to sleep, that is when ignorance occurs. And when ignorance comes, then there is kama or desire. That leads to karma. Karma leads to birth. Birth leads to eventual death. After death, because of pending karma, we are born again. And we keep on being born and died and born and died. And that's why it's called a samsara chakra. A circle has no beginning, no end. Now, this chain is a very strong chain. And we say, how do we get out of it? Now, they say any chain is as strong as its weakest link. And the weakest link of this chain is the link that connects desire with karma. If I can cut this chain there, then I can get out of this samsara chakra. And the different yogas that people practice have different instruments to cut that chain. So in karma yoga, we use detachment or vairagya to cut that chain. In jnana yoga, we use discrimination or discernment, viveka, to cut that chain. In bhakti yoga, we use that intense longing for God, mumukshutva, to cut that chain. And in Raja Yoga, we use this control of the mind, the senses, inner control to cut that chain. So each yoga uses a different instrument by which to break, because unless and until that chain is cut, we will not be able to become free from the samsara chakra. And so Jnana Yoga that we are studying now uses the instrument called Viveka. Now Viveka, we'll see more of it in the afternoon, but very briefly, what Viveka does is, it's really looking, it's like this. You go into a room and then you see a snake. And instinctively we start shouting and yelling, and then there is dukkha and suffering clearly. But if a person has Viveka, this person might say, how come there is a snake in my room? There are no snakes in this area. Let me go carefully. Let me go deeper and let me look and see. So if I carefully pay attention and then I see, oh, it's only a rope, it's not a snake. And then all my suffering, all my dukkha goes away, and then I'm relieved. In fact, I can have a good laugh at myself and say, oh, how did I made such a silly mistake? That is what we can do. Where all the dukkha is coming by thinking, oh, this body, mind, me, this poor little human being. Then I say, okay, now stop crying and look deeply. Is this me? And that's how then the word called neti neti. Look at me and say, no. The Upanishad say, I'm the infinite one. The body is not infinite. The Upanishad says, I'm unchanging. The body is changing all the time. This cannot be me. Then I look further inside. Then I see my mind. Is that me? Oh, the mind is changing. Mind is so fickle. So we keep on negating. Whatever we see, we ask the question, is that it? Is that it? Is that it? And finally, I will go to this, my true being, who I am. No questions will come then. And one who has looked deeply, that is the meaning of Viveka, looking deeply, finding what is real, what is not real, what is good, what is not good, what is helpful, what is not helpful. One who has done that and reached the source of the being, that person has become free. That person has attained moksha. And therefore, we have to start this practice of Viveka. It's a very, very powerful practice. And this has to be done in every stage of life, in every little thing that we do. Because if I'm careless and not looking deeply in these daily things and say, only I'm going to think about real and unreal, sat and asat, it's not going to work. Every little thing. Don't, when you are in a hurry, if you are cooking, if you have to put sugar, put sugar. Mistakenly, don't put salt there. So you have to be able to know exactly this is the right thing, this is the wrong thing. Similarly, all the friends that we have, if I'm carelessly kind of developing connections, then that can become a source of pain and suffering also. So, with whom I should have contact, with whom some people need to be kept at a distance, some people need to be. Sri Ramakrishna says that God is present in all, but then you still have to keep away from a lion or a tiger. You can't say, oh, God is there. So, we have to have this viveka in daily life. When we have been able to practice and always holding on to dharma, holding on to what is right, what is good, what is truthful. There is a saying in the Mahabharata, dharmo rakshati rakshitaha. If I protect dharma, dharma will protect me. And so leading a strong moral life, ethical life, can give so much strength. So we have to lead a life of honesty, a life of truthfulness. That gives strength. Swami Vivekananda was very fond of quoting this passage from the Upanishads. Nayam Atma Balahinena Labhyaha. This Atman cannot be attained by weak people. We have to be strong. Strong, not just the strength you get from going to a gym, but morally strong, emotionally strong, because only strong people can become free. And to get that moral strength, we have to make sure that in our daily life, we are honest, we are truthful, we are kind, we are unselfish. So this will give us the strength. And then we become strong enough to address some of these deeper, subtler questions of life. So I think this I'll stop here right now. But if you have any comments or questions, we just have 5 or 10 minutes. That will be nice. If you have anything, feel free to. Yes, that's ignorance. Maya is ignorance. Maya is the sleep which comes over Brahman. And there is a lot of discussion in the books about is the Maya real or unreal? It's like asking, is the snake real or unreal? You cannot say the snake is unreal because you are seeing it. You cannot say it is real Because when you switch on the light, it's not there. So it is neither real nor unreal, nor real and unreal, nor not unreal, not unreal. So in other words, you cannot say anything about it. So they use the word anirvachaniya. It cannot be expressed. Maya is like that. So is the Maya real or unreal? Ultimately, Brahman alone is real. So Maya is not there. But you are experiencing it. So just to one clarification, there are these two words, real, unreal. Real in Sanskrit means sat, unreal is asat. But there is a third category in Vedanta, which they call it mithya. Now mithya means, okay, let me put it this way. There are two kinds of unreal things. One kind of unreal is an unreal which nobody has ever seen and nobody can ever see. So in olden days, in old books, they give the example of, for instance, Shashashringa, a rabbit with a horn. Nobody has seen a rabbit with a horn. Now, this example worked all right until a few years ago. Now, with all this DNA thing, people now can grow anything on anybody. So we'll have to discard that example now. But we can still say a square circle. Now, what is the status of a square circle? You have to say, well, it's unreal. Nobody has ever seen a square circle. Nobody will ever see a square circle. So that is asat. But the snake that I see in a rope, I'm able to see it. It's unreal, but I'm able to see it. So they say in Sanskrit, yat asat bhasamanam tan mithya. So that which is unreal, which appears to be real, they call it mithya. So when we say the world is unreal, that doesn't mean the world doesn't exist. What it means is, even though you are seeing it, it's really not there. Just like the dream. You're seeing it, but it's really not there. Or you go to see a movie. You're seeing it, but really the only reality is the screen behind. So Maya is mithya. You cannot say it's real, you cannot say it's unreal. You are experiencing it, but ultimately it doesn't exist. So that is the nature of Maya. Yeah, yeah. That point of fact means those are Swami Vivekananda's words. What it means is we are experiencing it. That's a fact of our experience right now. But if you try to analyze it, from where did it come? And so you cannot find. In fact, according to Sanskrit grammatical rules, Maya means ya, that which is ma, which is not there. So Maya really means that which is not there. The literal meaning of the word Maya. And I mean that's why it's such a mystery in some way. That's why it's so difficult. Something we are experiencing, actually, it's the funny part is this. Sometimes, I think I briefly mentioned yesterday that the same evidence can be used by two opposing parties to prove two opposite things. This is something like that. Because normally, if you ask, people will say, how can you say the world is unreal? We are seeing it. And so they say, the world is real because we are seeing it. Now, Shankaracharya, in his commentary, he says, the world is unreal because we are seeing it. Because if you are seeing something, you are objectifying it. And that which is an object is not real. The subject alone is real. The knower alone is real. The perceiver alone is real. So that's the kind of a major difference in this objective material sciences who believe that there is something out there, while In Vedanta, they just have focus on the one who is experiencing it. Swami Vivekananda, in a letter he wrote to a disciple, J.J. Goodwin, who was the stenographer who noted down most of Swamiji's lectures in his complete works, Swamiji says in the letter, we Vedantins must look at everything from the subjective standpoint. And that is our normal tendency. 99.9% of the people do that. If we see something, we just say, why is that person like that? Why is that thing like that? We point outside and say, why it is like that? A subjective way would be to say, why am I seeing it that way? That is the Vedantic approach. Why am I seeing it? See, Holy Mother has once asked, this whole, it kind of become an explanation about why we should not see others' defects. And what Mother says is, think about it this way. This is not, I'm not putting in Mother's words, but the idea was this, that if I see a bad person and I become judgmental and said, that's a bad person, will I be able to see the bad person unless I had some idea in my heart of what being bad means? Swami Vivekananda says in his lectures on Dhyana Yoga, he says that there is a big gold brick, pure gold here. And then just imagine, and then there's this little baby playing in that same room, and there's a big diamond or a gold here. And another one person enters from that door, looks here and there, picks up the gold and starts walking away. And the baby is simply playing. The baby doesn't see the thief at all. And then Swamiji says, there is no thief inside the baby's mind, and the baby is not able to see the thief outside. Well, any grown-up would say, oh, chor aa gaya hai, call 911, call police. Because there is, the seeds of that thief are inside us. So what we see outside is a reflection of what we have inside. And that's why the world that Thakur saw is different from the world you and I see. We look out at the world and Swami Vivekananda says, we say, oh, how everybody is so selfish. The world is very corrupted. And then Swamiji says, what are you doing in this selfish world, in this corrupt world? If you are a part of this selfish, corrupt world, you probably are selfish and corrupt also. But when Sri Ramakrishna saw this world, he saw just the bliss of the Divine Mother. So, see, was Thakur and he living in the same world or different world? So something had changed inside him, so he saw the world very differently than you and I do. So what we see outside is a reflection of what is happening inside of us. And so that is something we need to change. That's the idea.
You are asking questions. Will you please come to the front because Swami is checking from there and he cannot hear the questions. So that is what is happening on YouTube is that people are not being able to hear the questions.
All right,
Please
come on.
This mic is on. Please come to the front.
Yeah, good
So
idea.
that it gets out the report.
Pranam Swamiji. My question about Susukti, deep sleep. Two questions actually. One is the extent of deep sleep that we have. Does it depend on our karma phala or the previous day's activities? And the second question is, how can we extend that? What do we need to do?
Yeah, good. Yeah, I would think. I'm sure there's some karma is playing a role about how much good sleep we get. In fact, they sometimes say that what kind of dreams we get, that there are certain karmas are giving their fruit in dreams also. So if I get a painful dream, then the dukkha I experienced is also a result of my karma in the dream. Or if win a lottery in my dream, that joy also is a result of some past karma. So karma phal can be experienced both in the waking or in dream also. And of course, the state of sushupti is a wonderful state. And because we don't have any explanation about who gets how much and why, we can just say, well, that is just God's grace. And your second question was about? Just pray. Pray that may might have better this thing. And again, I would imagine that the more we are able to go to sleep with a completely clear conscience, without having to worry about tomorrow or trying to process what happened yesterday or last year, I think we'll get to more sushupti. I mean, think about little babies. Babies sometimes, immediately after birth, sometimes they sleep for 10 hours, 12, 15 hours. They don't have to worry about tomorrow. They have no baggage, at least in that age. It will come up when they grow up. But at least that time, they don't have. So we have to recover our lost innocence of the childhood in order to get that. We don't have to become childish, but we have to become childlike, the way Thakur was. That's the idea.
So when we try to sit and
Hold it right in front of you. Yeah.
when we try to sit and focus our mind, the body is static, but the mind keeps jumping. The same way as when we go to sleep, the body is static. So the body doesn't exist there. Who gives the power for the mind to create thoughts?
All the power comes from the Atman. There is only one source of power. Both the body and the mind get their ability to do whatever they are doing, it comes from the Atman. That's why in the Kena Upanishad, Kene Shitam Patitam Preshitam Manaha, what is it that makes the mind do its job? What is it that gives the eyes the power to see? The question is asked, and they said, all that power comes from the Atman because it's consciousness alone that animates the body and mind. And the body and mind are not, the consciousness we see in the body and mind does not belong to the body and mind. It's only a consciousness of the Atman percolating through the body and mind. Without that, when the body is unconscious or the mind is unconscious, it becomes incapable of doing anything. So everything is ultimately traced back to consciousness. Even then, they are just part of the mind. They cannot do anything on their own unless the Atman is there. Yeah.
Swamiji, my name is Raghavendra Rao. My question is, in Vedanta we see so much information about how to live and get the appropriate mind control and focus on the Atma, all that, and how to live. The question is, could you shed some light? What happens when the person dies? Okay? And Shankaracharya explained basically saying when the person dies, he goes to the karma phala, to swarga, to enjoy the benefits of his karmas, and then gets into the cloud, get back into the world. Is it a complete recycle? Is that the only known thing? Could you shed some light on that, please?
When we speak about rebirth, birth simply means getting a body. Rebirth in itself does not mean coming back to this planet Earth. Because wherever we go after death, and whatever we have to experience, whether it's Brahmaloka, Chandraloka, Suryaloka, or any of the Narakas mentioned in Garuda Purana, wherever we go, we need to have some body. Even to experience suffering in Naraka, in hell, we need a body. To drink Somarasa and listening to the music and Apsara singing also, we need a body. So we are being reborn, and reborn simply means getting a body. But body, by definition, is perishable. Maybe the body in heaven perhaps could be for a few longer years, but even that has to end. And so, wherever we are born, as long as there is body, there is karma, there is dukkha. See, I mean, if you viveka can be applied even to the whole idea about what happened after death. Because the popular idea is, oh, Swarga means just joy, joy, joy. Naraka means just suffering, suffering, suffering. Actually, if you apply Viveka there, you think that's not true. Because first of all, even if I'm born in heaven, I'm getting a body there, and a body is going to have problems. If there is no sickness in heaven, why is there Dhanvantari? Dhanvantari is God's physician. Why would God need a physician if there was no sickness there? And then how often we read these asuras will go and attack, and all the devas will run to Mahavishnu or Shiva, help, help, help. So there is all everything that is happening in this world is happening there also. So after going there, we suddenly discover, oh, struggled so hard to come here. My own home was much better, we might think. In fact, there is a one ancient saying, it's a, Swargaloke mahad dukkham, Brahmaloke tathaivacha. Swargaloka is great suffering, Brahmaloka also great suffering. And then it ends by saying, Dukkham eva vicharataha. If you think about it deeply, you will see that wherever we get a body, there is dukkha. The idea is that's why moksha means not having to be born again. No body, no mind, nothing. That's the idea.
Pranam Maharaj, this is not a question, but rather a little bit more request for elaboration on the topic of Maya that we were just discussing. So you mentioned like this world is mithya, if for lack of clarity. So yet we have to be born in this mithya to perform our actions or to face this Mayavi world. Maya, in general, like when I used to meet to the ignorant me, it always sounded like a something with a negative connotation. But at the same time, what I'm finding is that there is both aspects of the good and bad in the Maya resides, and I perform my action. That's my only trajectory to liberation, even though I have to perform the action in this Maya or unreal Mithya world. So could you shed some more light on this, like the
No,
good
I
and the bad?
mean, it's like this. Whatever we are doing in Maya. When Maya is there, we cannot simply jump out of it. But it's changing my perception of the Maya. It's a little bit like this. Maya does not cover the reality fully. Just as the darkness does not cover the rope fully. If the darkness covered the rope fully, I wouldn't see the rope at all. I wouldn't mistake it for a snake. And so partial light is necessary. So the darkness is covering the rope only partially. A little bit of the rope is seen, which is why I'm mistaking it for a snake. So similarly, Maya also is not covering my heart fully. a little bit of light is still there. And so, a simple way to describe that would be we speak about Satchidananda. Sat means existence, Chit means consciousness, and Ananda, the bliss, infinitude. Now, we could say, and I'm kind of oversimplifying this, we can say that we are already partially enlightened because of the Satchidananda, the Sat part, we already realized. We already know that I exist. Nobody can say, I don't know whether I exist or not. It's a logical fallacy. And so, my own existence, I fully know. Where I'm ignorant, where Maya comes in, is I exist, but I am a human being. That's Maya. I am is real. What I add after I am, that's an error, that's a mistake. So Maya is present, but Maya is not covering me fully. And because that part of me still has that light, with the help of that light, I can then push Maya outside. If the Maya were covering me fully, then I couldn't have done anything. That's the idea. And Maya will never be able to cover me fully because me, I'm the infinite one. There is no other infinite. Maya is not infinite. Maya also is smaller than me, therefore it cannot cover me fully. That's the idea.
So, just a little bit more clarity. When you said push the Maya, we are pushing both the good and the bad and just
Sure.
becoming neutral. Is that the concept?
Yeah, we have to push both good and bad because God is not good. So we cannot limit God to goodness. Good and bad will always remain in this world because the world is polarized. If there is good, there is bad. There is light, there is darkness. Now, the ultimate reality, God or Brahman, is beyond good and beyond bad. So, although popularly now people generally say, "Oh, God is love, God is good." Nice to hear that, but philosophically, that makes no sense because the Western view has been like that. God is limited in some ways to being good and loving and kind. Then we have all this problem. What about so much evil and suffering and hatred? And then you have to invent a devil because God is all good. And so then you need a devil to take care of the other things. And so in the Upanishad it is, they say God is neither good nor bad. Good and bad is everything in this samsara. God is above, beyond good and bad. So in the Kathopanishad, Nachiketa tells Yama, show me the truth which is beyond dharma and beyond adharma. Now, dharma can be helpful. Dharma is helpful. We have to remove adharma, hold on to dharma, but then we have to go beyond dharma also. Now, that dharma also can be, after all adharma is gone, it's a little bit like people say, be good, don't be evil. And then somebody says, okay, I'm going to follow that. So you remove all evil and all now good, I am good. Then, like, now what am I going to do with all this good? This also is a burden. And then they say, if you can, keep this good aside and be free. But then people will think, no, 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 with this good, then I can go to heaven. There's so much somras I can drink there. All right, then go and drink somras if you want, then be born again. So at some stage, we have to go beyond even dharma. But that is a later stage. Right now, hold on to dharma and get rid of adharma. That's the idea. Okay, so we will stop here and we'll meet again in the afternoon at 3 o'clock. We'll conclude with a prayer. ॐ जननीं शारदां देवीं रामकृष्णं जगद्गुरुं पादपद्मे तयो श्रित्वा प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः